I'm Mike with House on the Mend, and in this video we're going to be installing the Topens DK1000S sliding gate opener. This is a very nice little unit. It runs off a DC motor and can use AC power, or as we're doing, strictly off the grid with solar power and battery, or a combination of both. Now, I'm not sponsored by Topens. I purchased this unit off of Amazon for $600 with my own money. And before I ordered this unit, I noticed I couldn't find the manual anywhere online or on Amazon. So I reached out to Topens customer support and never heard back from them. I'm working on getting this manual published on one of the websites that warehouses such things, but until then, if you want to email me at mike@houseonthemend.com, I'll send you a PDF copy. All right, without further ado, let's get started with the unboxing and the install.
If you break it, he will fix it. If you buy it, he will build it. House on the Mend.
All right, so here is everything that comes in the package with the kit itself. You have the enclosed gate opener with all the electronics. Then you have the mounting plate that will be mounted to the concrete, and then the gate opener will be attached to it. You have a surprisingly decent installation and user's manual for the motor, the solar panels, as well as the solar controller. It also comes with two signs saying that moving gates can cause serious injury or death, two remotes, each with its own CR2025 battery. You have a bag full of mounting hardware or spare fuse. These four little loopy things you may have seen in the Amazon description are actually meant to be sunk into concrete, and then once the concrete dries, you can use it as a mounting bolt. Our concrete is already set, so we're going to be using anchors. This key here is to unlock the drive so that you can manually open the gate in the event of a power outage. These are two magnets that will tell the box when to stop opening and stop closing, and these are the mounting brackets for those magnets. And lastly, in the package is three 24-volt solar panels. You have their solar controller, and then, surprisingly to me, it comes with all the necessary mounting hardware to mount the three panels together, as well as mount them to a fence post or other stationary object. I was also really impressed to see all this wiring used to slave these three together in parallel and then send them over to the charge controller. Really well done, insulated male and female connectors. All right, now on to what is not included but required. This unit here cannot accept a chain. It has to be run on these gear tracks. So they are sold separately in a group of 4, and as you can see here, they're going to be attached to the gate, and this gear here will drive the gate open and closed on these rails. They seem pretty robust. They are metal covered in plastic. And along with this rail kit is all the hardware needed to attach them. Not surprisingly, the batteries were not included with this unit. The instructions say you need 24 volts with a minimum of 12 amp hours, provided that you get at least 6 hours of sunlight on the solar panels per day, and around 10 openings and closings per day. So I shopped around locally here and could not find a 24-volt battery anywhere, but I went on Amazon and found these two 12-volt, 12-amp-hour batteries that I'm going to link in series so that I get 24 volts. And of course, I'll leave a link in the description for them. Not until I received the unit and opened up the case did I notice that there was no place for the batteries to go, so you're going to need an external method of storing the batteries and protecting them from the elements. So I just went out and got this waterproof box, very similar to something you would put on the front of a travel trailer. And inside it will house the two batteries, and it's got ports here for the wiring to come in from the solar panel and out to the box. As mentioned earlier, the kit comes with these mounting brackets that are meant to be dipped into the wet concrete, and then once dried, The mounting plate can be set over them and they can be bolted in place. Now we already have a concrete pad laid, so instead we're going to take this Ryobi hammer drill with a 3/8 inch bit, and we are going to drill down enough for these 3/8 inch anchors that are 1 7/8 inches long. That should be enough to hold this small gate opener in place. And when it comes time to hook up the solar panels to the charge controller and then to the batteries, the instructions say not to use anything less or anything smaller than 18 gauge wire. I'm going to use larger wire than that. This 14 gauge low voltage cable should work perfectly. I also have some clamps to mount it along the gate post, and I'll probably need some terminal connectors here and there along the way. Not required for installation, but something I did elect to purchase is this Topens wireless keypad entry system, and I'll leave a link to it in the description. So with the cover off, there's 3 areas I would like to show you. First is all this run here of where we can attach wiring. So you can see these first areas here already come pre-wired. That's for the motor and for the open and closing sensor, which I'll show you in a second. Next we have the lamp. If you were going to connect a lamp to it so when the gate is opening or closing, some sort of light goes off to alert those around you, that would be done here. The next one, adapter, just says reserved in the instructions. Not sure what that's for. And then we have battery. This is both for the battery setup, as we're going to be doing in this video. Next is photocell. So if you are going to set up a photocell, meaning a crossbeam, just like in a garage door opener, that would go here. If you are not using a photocell, as we're not yet, it needs to be installed with a jumper wire, just like comes here. That comes from the factory. All right, this next section here is for exit wands and other sorts of items like that that can be installed after the fact. Then we have the push button area. If you're going to install a push button exit, say you're rolling to exit and you just want to have a quick little push button like a garage door opener push button, that would go right here. And lastly, 24 volts out. This supplies power to exit wands, photocells, anything that may need power to run. All right, to the right side of the area we were just looking at is this panel of very important switches and buttons. We have 2 LED lights over here. The second one is the power light, so that will be illuminated whenever there's power to the unit. The Learn button is for installing new remotes, and when you have the unit in Learn mode, this REM light will be illuminated throughout that process. This set of dip switches are hugely important. A lot of times in ceiling fans and things, dip switches just change the frequency. Not here. These dip switches have all sorts of different functions. The first 2 switches are for midway mode. That's a mode you can set to have the gate only open partially. Say you don't want it to open the entire distance of, in our case, a 16-foot gate. You only want it to open a few feet to let a pedestrian in. You can program it to have a midway mode that's functioned with the remote control. Dip switches 3, 4, and 5 are for the soft stop period on the motor. So have you ever had a nice set of drawers, say in your kitchen, and when you close them, they have a little piston that slows that last little bit of closing? Well, you can have the same sort of feature with this gate at the fully open and fully closed position. And you can set that for 1, 2, or 3 seconds of slow motion. Now, at 8 inches per second of closing or opening time, I'm not sure that we're going to need that, but it's a pretty nice feature if we want to have a soft close rather than it banging into the end of the gate. Next we have dip switches 6 and 7, and those are for the auto close timer. So you can set that for off or 30 or 60 seconds to auto close. So if you want to open your gate and just drive away and have it auto close 30 seconds later, then you can set that, which is going to be a nice feature. I think we're going to try that to begin with. Lastly, we have dip switch number 8, and that controls which way the motor believes the gate opens and closes. By default, it's set to be installed on the right side of the gate and open up the gate to the right when you're facing from inside the property. If you need to change that, then you do that right here with dip switch number 8. And lastly, on the opposite side of the gate opener, just above the gear that's going to open and close the gate, is this little sensor here that senses the magnets that control how far the gate opens and closes. And as you can see here, it says ensure the magnet center is to align with the marked line above. So when you install this magnet on the railing system, the track, you have to line it up so that the center line of the magnet is right with the center line of this sensor. And then that will control when the gate terminates at opening and closing. All right, I'm going to start by connecting these 3 solar panels together. As you can see here, I've already connected these 2 plates, and they are going to come right to here, line up the holes. Then you take this mounting bracket here that's going to mount all 3 together and line that one up too. Now, something I was very happy to see is they are using nylon threaded nuts. However, these are not imperial, they are 10 millimeter. So you'll need a 10 millimeter wrench to keep it all going here. All right, I'm going to come underneath here. I'm going to start this screw. There we go. And I'm going to repeat those same steps over here. Now, before you go worrying about how I'm going to hook all these up in parallel, which way is that, the kit comes with this nice wiring harness. It's going to do all the thinking for you. It's going to take all 3 of the leads coming out of each solar panel, and it's going to connect them all together in parallel with one female connector for positive and negative heading out. So let's connect those up right now. Pretty easy, red to red, yellow to yellow, and so on down the line. All right, I've got all 3 of these zip tied together so they're not being pulled or anything off of just one, and then later on, once I get it mounted, I will zip tie it to this mounting bracket so that none of these are bearing the brunt of any weight. So all the wires in this solar controller come with a little bit of wiring hanging out that have been tinned with solder. Not much to work with here, so I took these wire strippers and I stripped out just a little bit more that I'll be able to combine with the leads that are heading to the various things, solar panel, battery, and the load, which is eventually going to go to the opener itself. And then I'll be able to twist those together, then use a little bit of electrician's tape to insulate those off from one another, and then for a nice finishing touch, I'm using some of this heat shrink that I have taken and applied over the entire connection. Now I'm just going to take this little lighter and shrink that down, and that'll make it fairly weatherproof, and it'll keep any water and grime and stuff out of it. All right, I'm going to complete those steps for the next 2 sets of wires. All right, so I've got this bracket mounted to this post that supports the gate, and the next thing we want to do is mount this solar panel piece here that all the panels connect to. And this little piece here is threaded and is going to receive regular threaded screws, so therefore I'm going to use a little bit of nail polish to make sure those don't get loose. All right, a little bit of nail polish right on the threads of this last screw. Get it started, and right in it goes. Now, of course, you could also use Loctite to hold these screws in place, but most people have nail polish, so it works really good, and it's a little bit easier to break the screws free if you ever need to move or adjust the panel somewhere else. So the solar panels are all installed along this post here, and right down from there we have our battery box with our 2 batteries. Now, I've taken the liberty to hook the positive to the negative on these two batteries, so that puts them into series when we hook up the positive to the negative here. So it's time to do that. We've got the solar controller right here, and the instructions say to hook up the battery power first and then hook it up to the solar panel. So just to avoid anything getting contacted incorrectly, I went ahead and taped these down. But let's go right here and hook up our negative first, and then our positive. Just to avoid anything falling down and making connection with metal, I'm going to put some electrical tape right over those leads, just as an added precaution. All right, this lead here heads up to the solar panel, so I'm going to hook that up right now, and then we should see our charge light come on. The charge light is on, which according to the instructions will stay on until the batteries are fully charged. And once the batteries are fully charged, then the charge light will go off. So we've scooted over our little bit of shade here that we've created with this awning, and we're getting full sun on those solar panels. So we're charging. Now we can work on the rest of the installation and have fully charged batteries by the time we're done. But before we do that, I'm going to zip tie some of the wiring up there at the solar panels so it's not flopping around, and then I'm also going to use these little connectors right here to police up this cable right against this metal post, and that'll make a nice clean look. Then we can move this out of the way and get started on the installation. Well, nothing is ever as easy as it seems it should be for me. When it came time to mount the base plate, I needed to measure the appropriate distance away from the gate. And while I was at it, I started looking at where I could mount this track system. So I found out that this bottom rail here for our gate would be too low for the gear, and this one was too high by quite a bit. So I couldn't make the lower one work. It was just too low. I had considered removing this bottom base plate and sitting this guy on the ground, but it still wasn't going to be the right distance away from this railing, and I didn't want this unit sitting right on the concrete where it would come in constant contact with water. So in the end, I decided to elevate the unit about 4 inches with this aluminum square tubing. And I used really long carriage bolts to mount it. And if you see here, it's really sturdy. So I don't think there'll be any problem with vibration. I used nylon threaded nuts here so they won't back out. So I measured everything and got the correct distance away from the gate. And I marked the 4 areas where I would want to drill into the concrete and install the anchor bolts. And so I took the hammer drill and I marked off with a piece of tape for the drill bit so I get the proper depth, and I drilled all 4 of these holes. Now let me say that Ryobi SDS, I believe, hammer drill is fantastic. It went through this concrete like a boss. I'd seen some videos on YouTube where it didn't do very well, but in my case it did great, maybe because this is such green concrete, it's only about a year old. I've got one last piece here. Once I get everything installed, I'm going to put a little bit of extra bracing right here just to hold it down, and then I'll be able to run the wiring up through here, and then there's a hole right in this area where I can run the wiring through, and it'll be tucked behind this little piece of aluminum. So I haven't sturdied that one yet, but I will in a little bit. All right, now it's time to install the rail system. And the kit comes with these 10 millimeter anchors. These are self-tapping here, which is really nice. These work great on these metal gates. So let's change our camera perspective and I'll give you a little bit better view of what we're going to do. All right, I got this overhead view set up so I can show you. The directions say there needs to be a gap between these gears and the gear of the track that is roughly 1 millimeter in thickness. So I just took a piece of 12 gauge wire, I taped it to the back here, and this is going to be my little measuring standoff as we go. So now when I rest this piece here, this first piece, I'll know that it is 1 millimeter off right at the gear, and then I'm going to take this level and I'm going to set it here, and I'm going to make sure everything's level, and then I'll take these clamps and I will clamp the rail to the gate, get it all set where I want it, and then I'm going to start setting it in place with the self-tapping screws. All right, we've got all the track laid with the proper standoff from the gear. Now let's do a test and make sure we're not binding up anywhere. All right, so now that we have all the track installed, it's time to install the magnets. Now, the instructions say that the opening end of the gate, which is down that way, should be the S magnet, and the closing end of the gate should be the N magnet. And then the sensor is right here, and I showed you that earlier. So the instructions say the magnet needs to be 20 to 30 millimeters away from the sensor. That's 2 to 3 centimeters. So I went into the kitchen and I grabbed one of my kids' little math rulers, and when we line that right up here, we're at about 2.5 centimeters. So we're perfect within that range. There's little set screws on the mount for the magnets, so you can shift it back and forth a little bit to get it just right. And the way this gate kind of bows towards the middle, that magnet was actually in a little bit too close, so I had to switch this mount around and adjust the screws to get it to the right position. But both of those are set within that range, and now we are ready to wire up the 24 volts to our unit and get set to do some open and closing tests. All right, so right down here is L, P, E, and N. Those are the areas where you would hook up your AC wiring if you were running AC, live, neutral, and ground. We're not doing that. Of course, we're using just the solar panels and the battery, so DC power only. And this guy right here is our battery. So these little connectors slide right on out, which is really convenient because it makes it a little bit easier to thread them right onto our two DC power leads, and then they have to be screwed down with this very tiny little flathead screw. But thankfully I've got my little house on the mend kit here, and I'm just going to tighten those down. All right, so when we plug this in, we should get our power light coming on right over here. Now I've got my body and everything clear just in case it decides to open or do something kind of funny. I've also still got the shaft unlocked so the unit can roll freely, so even if it tries to do something, no one's going to get hurt. So let's plug it in. Yep, there's our little tone saying we've got power. That's a good sign. Right in there, and as I cover from the sun here, I can clearly see a red LED light on. That's also a very good sign. So we are ready to start opening and closing and adjusting these magnets to get them right to the right spot so the gate functions properly. This is going to get good. All right, the unit comes with 2 remotes as we talked about, and they are already paired with the gate opener. Let's try it out. Super quiet. Nice and smooth. Here we are approaching the magnet, and it's slowing down for 2 seconds and then stops. So it has learned where that magnet is, and it is slowing down prior to hitting it. That's pretty impressive. Heading back for closing. And once again, look at it, I have it set to slow down for 2 seconds before it reaches the magnet, and that's what it's done. That's pretty great. All right, now it's time to take some measurements and figure out exactly where we want those magnets for full opening and proper closing. All right, from where the magnet is right now at the closing spot, we are about 10 3/4 inches away from this backstop. Now, I don't want to actually hit it each time. I don't think that would be good for it. So let's back it off here to about 10 5/8. And that would give us just a little bit of lee room over here so that we're not actually striking the gate against the guard here. And I think that'll work out great. So let's go move the magnet. All right, I made a little mark with a Sharpie right here at 10 5/8. So let's move this magnet down and then we'll test it again, and we should be right on time. There we go. Let's try it again. Perfect. Didn't impact. There's about, what, 1/8 of an inch or so of space. So if we want at night, we can still come out here and lock the gate. All right, I set the self timer to auto close at 30 seconds, which is one of these dip switches, and 28, 29, 30. There it goes. So with 4 pieces of track, which is 4 meters, a little over 13 feet, you can see on this 16-foot gate, we still have quite a bit of room that we could open a little bit more to make it easier for cars to come in and out. So I have ordered 1 more piece, and it's gonna come in today, and I'm gonna add that piece of track right here, and we'll take full advantage of this nice big gate. All right, we're getting close to being done. There's one more thing we want to do though, and that's to install this wireless keypad out front. So the first thing you do is take a knife and very carefully pry this little plate out right here. Then you have this keypad with these 2 screws. I backed those out all the way, and then that releases this little plate. Now I'm going to drill 1, 2, 3 holes and mount this to our cinder block wall. On the back of the keypad, you'll see this little plate with a screwdriver, a Phillips screw head right here. We're going to open that up, and that's where we put the batteries in. All right, so by default, the pin number is 6/8. So you press pin, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then OK. And our gate opens. All right, so I drilled these 3 holes out on my drill press with a 5/32 bit, and I've come over here and I've centered it on this wall and marked with a Sharpie, so we have these 3 dots, and we're going to drill into those now. Just a standard masonry bit. Attach the plate. Then attach the keypad. And finally the cover plate. All right, we've had this gate opener installed for a couple weeks now, and I must say so far it is working flawlessly. I am really happy with it. I really love the auto closing feature. You just drive through the gate, and I have it set for 30 seconds, so 30 seconds later it closes on its own. I don't have to drive out and then click the remote again. It's all handled by the computer inside. It's fantastic. The range on the remotes I found to be really good. I haven't tested it, but inside the car and out, it's real good. Now let's talk about the rails. So they're good and sturdy, but they definitely were the hardest part of the install. I do think a chain would have been a lot easier to install. You really only have the front plate and the back plate that are either bolted or welded onto the gate itself, and then you put the chain on and tension it. It would have allowed me to mount the box itself anywhere on the ground and then just mount the chain plates so that they fit properly, rather than having to go through the whole bunch of extra steps for raising up the motor like I had to. Also, I could only find these rails on Amazon in a pack of 4. I ended up needing one more, so now I have these 3 spares, and they were pretty expensive. They were $60 or $70 for the pack of 4. I looked around, couldn't find them in 1 or 2 pack bundles anywhere. So what I'm going to do is post these on eBay and I'll sell them. The shipping is probably going to be a consideration because they're rather heavy, but it'll be better than having to buy all 4 and then being stuck with 3 extra ones like I am. I did have mediocre success with the keypad. I find it to be kind of intermittent. Now that might be due to the batteries that came with it. They came pre-installed and maybe they're a little worn out. The nice thing about the keypad is it did come with a spare set of batteries, so I'm going to change them out and see if that makes it work a little bit better. I did end up buying an extra 2-pack of these remotes, and they paired very easily. You pretty much just press the learn button, then pressed on the remote. It's right in the instructions on how to do it. I had no issues whatsoever. Now in the Amazon description, it says that the motor has an opening rate of 8 inches per second. In my tests, I found that to be 7.4 inches per second, which is pretty close. Mine also could have slowed down a little because I have that soft opening feature where it kind of slows down in the last second to prevent a lot of slamming back and forth, and that might explain why I got a little less than 8 inches per second, but still, my gate opens 15.5 feet in 25 seconds. That's much better than the kid-powered motors I was using. If you found this video helpful, will you please give it a thumbs up? It really helps the YouTube algorithm suggest it to more people. I'm also going to update my calendar for about a 6-month review, and I'll come back and do another video on any issues I may have come up with and how the unit's working. And I'll put a link up in this video right here when I do post that video. Now, we'll be leaving affiliate links below for everything I purchased for this install. Full disclosure, if you click on those and end up making a purchase, I do get a small reward from Amazon at the end of the month. It helps to justify the cost and the time it takes for me to do these videos, and it doesn't cost you anything at all. So please give them a click if you are thinking about buying and purchasing anything that I used in this video. Until next time, thank you for watching.